Hello and welcome to the Pig and Whistle Tales from Azeroth. As always here at the Pig and Whistle Inn in Stormwind, I go through a variety of subjects with regards to World of Warcraft. So grab a bottle or a pint, sit back and enjoy. This midweek episode we'll be going over the What Are series and we'll be looking at the Paladin class. This is for those who are looking to get into World of Warcraft a bit more, but there are some things for the higher levels in terms of how they are utilised in both PvP and PvE. And, if you're just looking to ult this class, then this can definitely help you out with that. So what are Paladins? Essentially, they are a class that wears plate. They tend to stay around the two-handed weapon sort of side, one-handed weapon if you are looking to go tank. The specializations that they have are Holy, Protection, and Retribution. Holy, as you can imagine, is a healing spec. Protection, you guessed it, it's a tank spec. And Retribution is a DPS spec. So they have one of each of the specializations in the game. And they're all very, very good at what they do. Retribution have a lot of utility. Paladins in general actually have a lot of utility. That is where their strength comes from. They can use Blessing of Protections, Blessing of Freedoms, loads of different blessings these are called. They're not actually called blessings anymore. They were back in Classic and Wrath of the Lich King and stuff like that. But essentially this means that a freedom you can get out of roots and snares. A Blessing of Protection, you are immune to physical attacks. Blessing of Spell Warding, this is if you change your protection into a spell warding protection, and this means that you're immune to magical attacks. You have your own personal bubble, your immunity bubble, which is always very nice on a class. You have a lot of utility, and Blessing of Sacrifice means that you take some of the damage that like your tank does, or whoever you put it on. So that the utility is through the roof with Paladins, but let's start with Protection. Protection are very decent in raiding and PvE scenarios. I'm pretty sure the current meta is like Guardian Druids, from what I've seen or what I know at the moment. I'm not too sure about that. I could be completely wrong. But again, these Paladins have, or Protection also has all of these utilities. I think, if I'm not mistaken, none of these utilities get taken away. You always have Freedom, Blessing of Protection, Sacrifice, Divine Shield, which is your personal immunity. You've got many of these different things. So Protection is very good. You're utilizing a sword and board, a sword and shield, and you're essentially using as a Paladin always would, light spells. You have multiple like hammers that you can throw. You can throw a frisbee at people that ricochets and bounces between a certain amount of targets. You have your own healing. There is a lot that you can do, and it is a very cool... It's kind of like a priest. Well, actually, it is a priest, but a priest that was trained to be a warrior. That's what Paladin is in the lore of World of Warcraft. And most lore in most games, I think, actually. I would imagine it is. So the Protection Paladin, I really can't say much on it. It is a very good, solid tanking option. It has a lot of AoE tanking, such as Consecration. You basically consecrate the ground, and a certain area around you is just lit up, and everything that is stood in it takes some damage and stuff like that. So Protection is very solid, and it is a very solid tank spec to actually get yourself into tanking in World of Warcraft. Retribution is very heavily utilised in PvP. It's got multiple compositions. It's got Ret Warrior, it's got Cupid Cleave, which is Retribution Hunter, Ret and then Hunter. It's got many different ones, but a lot of it comes from the utility that Retribution can bring. So in PvP, you can get a talent, which is Blessing of Sanctuary. Essentially, you can use this on a friendly target or yourself, and it will get them out of a fear or a stun, or there's something else I'm pretty sure, but I can't remember exactly what it states, which is really good. Any sort of crowd control break is really, really strong, or not strong, but very good to have in your composition. It has good off healing, so it is a support class. It has a lot of utility, like I suggested. It has a lot of defensives for other people, such as Blessing of Protection, Blessing of Sacrifice, Blessing of Freedom, just so people can't get slowed, and if they're being chased by a melee, It's very useful to keep them on the move, that kind of thing. So retributions are really good. In PvE, I'm not too sure. I think they're on the lower end, I'm not going to lie. This is mainly due to the fact that they don't have as much sort of AoE potential as most of the others. Most of the other classes that are currently meta, I believe. But I could be completely wrong in that. Do not take any of that. And all of the classes that are DPS classes are very much viable in Mythics. Like, if you are good enough at the class, everything is viable. Some might just be a bit more, you have to work for it a bit more, whereas others might just be, I press one button and I'm doing 1 million DPS. Whereas the others slamming their desk and I've got 20 buttons to press to even come close to that, that kind of deal. But I would say it's still very, very much one of them specs that is very good, especially in PvP at the moment. A lot of people saw that they got a few nerfs and stuff, and people kind of think that it went under the radar, which it has in my opinion, because a couple of other specs came to the forefront, such as Boomkin, Shadow Priest, Mage looks like it's going to be at the forefront very soon. So yeah, it's very underrated at the moment, Retribution, and I'd very much recommend it as a starting DPS class. Holy Paladin, it wasn't in a great place about a month ago. Now it's one of the best healers in the game. For PvP, anyway. The utility, again, what it can bring it to a PvP situation is amazing. Freedom, Blessing of Sacrifice, protections, big healing, massive CC such as Hammer of Justice, Hodge, or, Blind, Repentance. It's got multiple ways to CC, so all of its utility is so amazing. It's just, it couldn't keep up in terms of healing output, but now that it can, now it actually can, because of the changes that they made a few weeks back, which is really, really good. It's really good. All of the healers that should be, all healers should be looking to get these sort of buffs and bring them up to standard with the likes of Evoker and Paladin. But Paladin, if you're looking to get into a healing role, Holy Paladin is very good because it's quite simple, but the higher end, it's actually very detailed in how you utilize all of your abilities. So in PvP, you have Denounce. It's actually worth using Denounce rather than healing at certain times, and it's just knowing when to use that, which can make or break sort of the game. You can either win off of it or you can lose off of it, that kind of deal. But it is a very simple spec to start getting into, because it's very much, you put a beacon on this guy and you heal this guy and it will heal the beacon target as well. And then you can have 2 beacons. You don't really have much of AoE healing, I don't believe. Or it's very a lot less than what others have, such as an Evoker, I would say, stuff like that. But again, I'm not a healer myself. All I know is that they are very good and they are actually very enjoyable right now. They are one of the most enjoyable classes to play at the moment. Any class that is high up on the sort of pick rate or on the stronger side is obviously going to be very fun and exciting and enjoyable at the moment. So now is the time to actually get into Paladin, because 2 out of 3 of the specs I can guarantee are very strong at the moment. The third one is Protection, but I still believe that it has got a very solid place in PvE. I could be completely wrong, but I believe that they are all very solid options for this class at the moment. But that is it for this episode. Thank you all very much for listening. As always, do check out all of the links down below. TikTok, Twitch, YouTube, everything's happening down there. But thank you all very much for listening, and go with Valor, friend. Goodbye all.